The night over the plains was unusually still, as if the earth itself was holding its breath. The people of Sodom slept under a sky painted with fading embers, unaware that the air around them had begun to shiver, not from cold, but from something deeper, something ancient stirring beneath the surface. The soil felt warm, pulsing, like a heart beating faster than it should. For generations, the city had grown proud. Its towers stretched upward, its markets overflowed with wealth, and its people laughed at the idea that anything, man, angel, or God, could threaten their strength. When the sky remained silent year after year, they assumed it would always stay silent. But that night, the silence cracked. It began as a whisper. A low rumble drifting through the wind, too soft for most ears, like a distant stone scraping across metal. Dogs lifted their heads. Lantern flames trembled. The rumble deepened, becoming a vibration in the ground, then a pulse in the air. Some awoke, confused, blinking into the dark hallways of their homes. Children cried without knowing why. Old men gripped their doorframes, feeling the wood tremble like a living thing. No one could understand whether the sound came from the heavens or the depths of the earth. And then the sky tore open. A flash of white exploded overhead, not the gold of lightning or the red of fire, but a blinding, violent white that felt like it pierced through bone. In the center of that white, a burning sphere dropped from the heavens, growing larger by the heartbeat, trailing a shimmering tail that hissed like molten metal. People screamed. Some fell to their knees. Others stared, frozen, unable to comprehend what was descending upon them. The sphere struck the outskirts of the city with a roar that devoured every other sound. The moment it touched the ground, the earth buckled inward, not burning, but disintegrating. Dust erupted upward in a pillar that swallowed the moon. Before anyone could flee, a second sphere appeared. Then a third. Sodom had no walls high enough, no prayers loud enough, no strength mighty enough to survive what was falling from the sky. The explosions didn't spread flames like ordinary fire. They released waves, invisible, crushing walls of heat that tore through the streets. Stone shattered like glass. Clay pots burst into fragments before they even touched the floor. Roofs collapsed without ever catching fire, the heat simply erased their shape. People didn't burn. They vanished. Skin turned to vapor. Bones cracked under the force and scattered like dust in the wind. What followed wasn't fire, it was annihilation. The ground split open in a jagged scar that ran straight through the central marketplace. A mother clutching her two children tried to leap across, but the earth beneath her feet collapsed. A violent suction pulled everything downward, sand, wood, bodies, as if the world had opened its mouth and devoured its own people. Above them, the sky roared again. A massive cloud of fire rolled over the city like a living creature, its edges whipping through the air. It did not drift, it dove, straight toward the heart of Sodom. When it struck, time seemed to stop. The blast didn't push outward, it imploded, crushing everything inward before erupting into a bloom of heat that reached the mountains. The tallest towers fell first, sliced in half by air so hot it warped stone. Temples crumbled in seconds. Streets that had been walked for centuries were erased in the space of a single breath. A swirling vortex of dust and shattered stone rose up, twisting through the night like a dark tornado illuminated by the burning glow of the heavens. Amid the chaos, one lone figure stumbled from the ruins of a crumbling home. His face was streaked with ash and blood. The heat had burned the ends of his hair, and the cloth around his shoulders glowed faintly from the scorching air. He looked up, and saw the sky. Not the stars, not the moon, but something beyond them. A shimmering curtain of light rippled like a veil being pulled away, revealing shapes, towering, fiery shapes, watching the destruction with unblinking, merciless eyes. For the first time in his life, the man understood fear that lived beyond the world. Fear that didn't belong to mortals. Fear that belonged to the ancient forces that shaped the heavens. His lips parted. He tried to speak. A prayer, a cry, a warning, even he didn't know. But the words never came. A final burst of white erupted from above, brighter than every flame that had touched the earth that night. The light hit him with the force of a collapsing mountain. His body dissolved before it touched the ground. There was no scream, no shadow, only air. And then, silence. When the wind finally settled, nothing stood where Sodom once lived. No towers, no walls, no bones. The sand itself had melted into glass in sweeping, rippling patterns. The earth had changed color, darkened, scorched, scarred. The air smelled of sulfur, dust, and something else, something metallic, like the breath of a dying star. For thousands of years, travelers who passed through the valley told stories of a place that felt wrong, a land where compasses faltered, where footsteps echoed unnaturally, where shadows fell at strange angles. And hidden deep beneath layers of charred soil, untouched by fire or heat, protected by something no one understood, lay a single relic, a stone tablet covered in symbols carved moments before the destruction. The one thing the fire could not destroy. It would remain buried in silence, waiting for the age when men would dig beneath the earth again, and rediscover the truth. The truth that Sodom left behind. For nearly 4,000 years, the desert kept its secret. Sandstorms rolled across the valley like wandering ghosts, burying and uncovering fragments of a past nobody understood. Travelers avoided the region instinctively, claiming the air felt heavy, as if the land remembered what had happened, and demanded silence. It wasn't until the summer of 2024 that the stillness finally broke. The discovery began with an accident. A team of geologists from a Middle Eastern university had been drilling core samples, studying ancient climate patterns. They expected sand, stone, maybe salt, not what their sensors detected 15 meters deep. The drill struck something that sounded like metal. The noise echoed through the valley in a strange, ringing note that seemed to hum long after it should have faded. The team paused, exchanging uneasy glances. Metal didn't belong here. Nothing should have survived the catastrophe that legends claimed had erased an entire city in a single night. They dug manually. Dust filled the air as shovels scraped against something smooth, cool, unburnt. It took hours before the object emerged fully, a rectangular slab, perfectly preserved, its surface dark and polished like volcanic glass but harder, heavier, older. The desert sunlight revealed symbols carved across its face. Not cuneiform. Not hieroglyphs. Something different, angular, swirling lines intersecting like constellations mapped onto stone. The youngest member of the team whispered the name that had been avoided for centuries. Sodom. The others went quiet. In textbooks, Sodom was myth. In religious texts, punishment. In archaeology, a ghost without ruins. But the valley surrounding them matched every ancient description, the salted soil, the glass-like crust, the strange magnetic anomalies. Now they stood over the first artifact ever found in the region. And it was intact. They loaded the tablet into a reinforced container and sent a report to their university. Within hours, military vehicles descended on the camp, sealing it off from the world. The tablet was escorted to a private research facility hundreds of miles away, where a multinational team of archaeologists, linguists, and physicists gathered. For weeks, the stone refused to reveal its origin. Its material was unlike anything previously catalogued. Not obsidian, not meteorite, not any kind of stone that natural processes could create. It contained microscopic lattice patterns only seen in high-energy impact glass, yet it showed no sign of having been melted. The carvings were deep and precise, cut by a tool far harder than diamond. No ancient civilization possessed such technology. As they studied it, strange things began to happen in the lab. Sensors flickered when the tablet was near. Digital clocks ran fractionally faster. Metallic dust seemed drawn toward its edges. And anyone who spent hours working beside it reported odd dreams, dreams of a burning sky, towering shapes made of light, and a voice repeating a warning they could never fully remember upon waking. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. A linguist specializing in Proto-Semitic noticed that some of the symbols resembled extremely old root forms, shapes that predated written alphabets, forms that tribes spoke orally before language diverged. When combined, the symbols formed patterns resembling warnings, commands, and dates. The team realized with growing dread that the tablet wasn't written shortly before the city's destruction. It was carved during it. The final lines, etched with frantic strokes, translated into 5 chilling words. The sky will open again. Below it were scattered symbols indicating a cycle, a repeating event, followed by an unmistakable depiction, a fiery trail descending from the heavens, striking the earth. The room fell silent as the team stared at the translation. Some denied it. Some laughed nervously. Others whispered prayers. But one researcher, a senior geophysicist, remained pale and quiet. He pulled up satellite records, old seismic maps, and newly discovered meteor layers from the region. His hands trembled as he spoke. This wasn't mythology. This valley experienced an airburst. Something exploded above them, hotter than fire, faster than sound. The energy was enough to erase the entire city instantly. He projected the data onto the wall. A blast radius, heat signatures, and the unmistakable signature of a cosmic impact. Not a ground strike. A mid-air detonation. The patterns matched the Tunguska explosion in 1908, the Chelyabinsk meteor in 2013, and several other airburst events across the world. But there was one terrifying difference. Sodom's event was 100 times stronger. The room filled with murmurs, arguments, fearful breaths. One archaeologist pointed at the translation. But how could they know? How could they carve this while everything around them was disappearing? The linguist swallowed hard. He pointed to another cluster of symbols forming a repeated phrase, carved over and over across the bottom edge. It wasn't the people carving this, he whispered. It was one person. Someone who saw it before it happened. Across the room, a historian leaned forward, eyes narrowing. A prophet. The linguist hesitated. Or a survivor. No one answered. Outside the facility, the world went on unaware. But inside, the team felt the weight of something older, larger, more terrifying than any story they had grown up with. They turned back to the tablet. At the bottom was an engraving of a valley, their valley, drawn with uncanny accuracy. A circle marked the center, surrounded by radiating lines that looked like shockwaves. But more disturbing was what lay beneath the valley in the drawing, wavy lines, channels, and openings rising upward. Not water. Not lava. Pressure. The geophysicist's face went pale as he measured the depths on the tablet and compared them with modern seismic data. All of this, he said, voice shaking. It's happening again. The pressure beneath the fault line, it's rising. Exactly the way this drawing shows. A heavy silence swallowed the room. The same silence that had once hung over Sodom moments before the sky turned white. The scientists stood trapped between their world and a forgotten one, between ancient devastation and a warning carved by a hand long turned to dust. And without realizing it, they had already triggered the next chapter of the story. By digging into the valley, by disturbing the layers of molten earth, by lifting the tablet from its resting place. They had broken the seal that had remained untouched for 4,000 years. Far beneath the desert, the earth stirred again. Just as it had on the night the heavens rained fire. Night fell over the desert with unusual speed, as if the sun itself wished to avoid witnessing what was coming. The research facility stood silent under a starless sky, its metal walls trembling faintly with the low hum of generators. Inside, the scientists gathered around the tablet, their faces illuminated by sterile white light, unaware that the ground beneath them had begun to pulse like a sleeping heart. The first tremor was gentle, a soft quiver that rattled the pens on a table. No one noticed. The second tremor lifted dust from the ceiling. A junior researcher looked up nervously, but before she could say anything, the linguist gasped. Look at the tablet. The carvings, fixed and silent for millennia, seemed to shimmer. Not physically, but visually, as though light were bending differently across their edges. The tablet's surface vibrated subtly, almost imperceptibly, but enough that the symbols blurred like ripples on water. It's reacting to something, whispered the geophysicist. But there's no stimulus. No field. No. A third tremor hit. This one did not pretend to be gentle. The lights flickered. A distant boom echoed through the valley, like thunder trapped underground. Alarms blared through the facility. Monitors flashed warnings. Seismic activity detected. Structural risk level 3. The team scattered, rushing to screens, data tables, and emergency protocols. The geophysicist stared as his seismic readings spiked. Something's moving beneath us, he said hoarsely. Not tectonic. Not plates. It's rising. Before anyone could ask what it meant, the linguist shouted from across the room. The tablet changed. They ran back to it. And froze. New lines were carved across the surface, lines that hadn't been there an hour ago. Fresh, sharp cuts glistened as though made seconds earlier. The scientists backed away instinctively, breath trembling. This is impossible, someone whispered. Stone can't. But the stone had. The new carvings formed a single sentence in the ancient symbolic language. You have opened the gate. A cold silence fell. Then, the earth roared. It wasn't a quake. It was a bellow. A violent, guttural howl from the deep layers of the planet, the kind that didn't sound like shifting stone but something alive, something enormous, forcing its way upward. The floor split. A hairline crack shot across the concrete, glowing faintly with orange light. Heat surged upward like the breath of an oven. Equipment toppled. Papers scattered. The scientists stumbled back in terror as several cracks converged beneath the table holding the tablet. The stone lifted. Not by human hands. By pressure. It hovered inches above the table, vibrating violently, as if drawn toward the cracks below, as if the earth wanted it back. Put it down, shouted the geophysicist. But no one was touching it. The tablet was rising on its own. A beam of blinding white light burst through the cracked floor, engulfing the room. The walls shook. Metal warped. A sound like screaming air filled their ears. For a moment, the scientists could see nothing but light. When their vision cleared, the tablet was gone. The crack sealed itself with a hiss of cooling stone. And the light vanished. An unnatural stillness settled, but it wasn't peace. It was the breath held before a final exhale. They ran outside. What had once been a quiet desert valley was now unrecognizable. The sky was a bruised shade of ash blue. The air shimmered with heat. And at the valley's center, where they had drilled earlier that day, a column of steam rose upward, straight, unnatural, like a beacon. The ground swelled beneath it, forming a dome that grew slowly but steadily, pulsing with each heartbeat of the earth. The geophysicist stared in horror. It's exactly like the tablet showed. Pressure, a buildup, the valley is becoming a vent. A vent for what? Someone whispered. No one answered. Suddenly, the air changed. A sound rolled through the valley. Not thunder, not wind, but a deep, resonant hum. The same hum described in ancient texts. The same hum survivors had spoken of before their stories dissolved into myth. A hum the people of Sodom had heard seconds before the sky fell. The linguist clutched his head. It's a warning, he gasped. The tablet wasn't just a record, it was a seal. A containment. We broke it. The dome cracked. Light poured out. The sky turned crimson. Seconds later, the first explosion erupted. A pillar of fire shot into the atmosphere, spiraling upward like a twisting spear of molten glass. The shockwave swept across the valley, flattening sand dunes, tearing apart the facility, and throwing every explorer to the ground. The world spun. Ears rang. The sky glowed white-hot. The geophysicist forced himself up, his voice breaking. It's happening again. An airburst, a superheated detonation, history is repeating. Another eruption cut him off. This one was larger, brighter, terrifying. The air itself seemed to evaporate, replaced by a blinding column of plasma that punched a hole into the clouds. The temperature rose instantly. Stones liquefied underfoot. The sand became glass. The linguist, barely conscious, whispered through cracked lips. The tablet said the waters would come from below, but it wasn't water. A final realization dawned. The ancients weren't warning about a flood, he breathed. They were warning about a cycle of destruction, a cosmic impact beneath the earth. Something that builds, and detonates. The earth convulsed. A white sphere of fire expanded outward. At the valley's center, the ground finally gave way. A massive cavity opened, swallowing rock, sand, and the last remnants of the facility. From its depths rose a final plume, the largest yet, white, red, and gold all at once, the color of a sun being born and dying in the same breath. It climbed into the sky. Glowing brighter. 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 And then, silence. The fire collapsed inward. The shockwave blew outward. No scream survived it. By dawn, the valley was gone, erased from the map, its contours melted into a smooth, glassy crater that still glowed faintly with residual heat. No bodies were found. No equipment remained. Only a single object sat at the crater's center, perfectly untouched by fire or force. The tablet. It lay cool and intact, its carvings unchanged except for one new line etched across the top. The first gate has opened. Far above the Earth, satellites detected a strange anomaly, a thin cloud of unknown particles rising through the atmosphere, spreading like a veil across the sky. And at the edges of the world, in Siberia, in the Pacific, in the deserts of Australia, seismic instruments began to tremble. The cycle had restarted. Just as the ancients had warned.